Oh, got my notes. We're doing this. Put my notes in the right place. Corley Moore, Firehouse Vigilance. This is weekly scrap number 83. Our guest tonight, he is a firefighter with the Everett Fire Department in Washington. Jay Bonnifield works the tailboard on Engine 1 downtown. He has been a firefighter for 12 years. He teaches engine company operations with Brothers in Battle, the Snohomish Fire Training Academy. I had to get the pronunciation somewhat in the right ballpark. West Coast Fire Training. If you have not read his stuff, do yourself a favor. Go to Engine Company Resurrection and search for Jay Bonnifield. Then go read some great information because this man loves to share information. So, last but most important, he is a husband and father. So, Jay Bonnifield, it is my pleasure to have you on today as the guest of Weekly Scrap number 83. Welcome, brother.
Man, thanks for having me. It was an awesome intro. You nailed it. And Snohomish, that's hard, man. People butcher that thing like crazy. So well done.
I get extra points for snowmo. I'm going to butcher it now. Okay. So to everyone, everyone watching live, if you have questions for Jay or myself, please do not hesitate to send them in the comments. Is there anything I missed in the intro that you need to add?
Not at all, man. You nailed it. You
Okay.
summed me up.
Then I'm going to jump right into where I actually first heard about you, which is Anatomy of a Push. So, I mean, the name, talk to me about what it is, how it was born, and more importantly, when do I get to see it again? Like, when is it going to be done again, live?
Yeah. So as far as when it's going to be done live again soon, I got a couple. I think Brew City Fools, and then there's a couple others that I might end up doing. They're kind of in the works here. I've been doing a lot of that class for a lot of like fools groups and stuff like that, and just kind of like my way of giving back to them. The fools had a pretty big impact on the early part of my career, especially our local fools chapter here provided a lot of that kind of my first exposure, like not certificate based, like real training, that's just good stuff that you go to and you're like, oh man, like what is this? I've never had anything like this before. And so it's
Yes.
anytime I get a chance to get back to a fools group, or Fire Nuggets is another one. Either of those two organizations, I will, do anything I can to get back to them. So, but yeah, as far as like where it kind of started out, um, man, I've been on this trajectory kind of, I guess a journey would be a better word for it. In my kind of quest of mastery of engine company operations, and I'm a tailboarder. I'm not an officer. I don't drive. I am on a nozzle, and that's my job. And I take a lot of pride in that. And it's something that I think is over the last few years really started to come back into the fire
Right.
services as a really important, really valued thing to have, is and a trait to be, is a great nozzle person. And so along with that, I've been exposed. I got a lot of fantastic mentors here in my backyard. I've got obviously Aaron Fields is a guy who's right here in my backyard. Like I can scoot on over, take a ferry, and go have coffee with Aaron regularly. Chat with him on the phone. Scott Corrigan's right here in my neck of the woods, and same thing. Scott, Casey, the Corrigans, we chat all the time. And then there's just tons of other people. It's like this little engine company rich area.
Right. No doubt about it, man.
Oh, it's awesome. So that having those resources and being able to just kind of sit here and like a sponge absorb all of this information, at the same time kind of being given the reins with a couple other guys to build basically build a engine company curriculum and a fire academy from scratch, which made me just like deep dive into why I do what I do. And a lot of what I came to was kind of this conclusion that a lot of what I do on the fire ground, and a lot of what I think makes me a good nozzleman, it was stuff that was passed on to me, maybe not super directly, but it was stuff that kind of became something that I did and I had a hard time explaining it, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And so going back to the fire academy, I was like, well, how do I deconstruct this and explain it to somebody who doesn't have the frame of reference,
Right,
and put it into a rhythm that they'll understand and be able to read and react and stick their foot in the ground and drive on something. And so it just really made me sit down along with the other guys who were designing this curriculum. It made us sit down and really like contemplate deeply why I do what I do, what specifically, because it ultimately has to come down to like how something somebody has to look at something and they have to see it, hear it, feel it, and know what to do about it, right? I can fill their heads with tons of information, but if they don't come down to a reaction essentially based on what they see, hear, or feel, like all that information does is slow them down. So that's kind of where Anatomy of a Push came from. And that on top of, there's I do jujitsu, and
nice.
I've been, wrestling and rolling for a long time. And there's a series on YouTube called Anatomy of a Choke. And it's one of like my favorite breakdowns of where they take some of these different, some of these different submissions and some of these different techniques, and they break them down, like really, really break them down and make you understand like the tiny details.
Yeah, the angle of the wrist versus, 100%.
Exactly. And so all these little things that you're like, oh, just like, shifting my weight this way or cutting my hips this way.
Cut my hips, yeah.
Like that.
Yes.
Like, boom, got it, right? And so I was like, that's what I needed. Like, that's what has really got me feeling like I've got a good grasp on this stuff, is starting to pick up on those nuances and stringing them together. So that's really where the class came from.
Nice. Pulling it up. You have gotten quite a bit of hype here. I got an "Oh yeah" Kool-Aid Man style from Joey Hayes down in Florida. Jake Dodge says Jay. Dominic Dominguez says my man. Kyle Thon, yeah, Jay. Jacob Johnson, let's go. So excited for this. Dude, you got some names chiming in. Lamar Green, man. Stand by to get some. I'm getting everybody in here. I'm just going to get everybody in here. Scott Burgart said, Brew City, looking forward to having you. Cody Testrel said, protected class, 2 exclamation points. And Aaron Jackson said, big jiu-jitsu guy here as well. So, yes, we're jiu-jitsu represented. So,
That's right.
All right. So, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm walking on you.
No, I was going to say all the mat rats out there. So
and Ryan Pennington said engine for the win with the question mark. So you can address that if you want.
What did he say?
Engine for the win? Question mark.
Yes, sir.
So is it safe to say you have some live fire training experience?
Yeah, that one's been I would say like a parallel journey, but I put it in a little bit of a different category. The live fire stuff is, I would say, going back to like my beginning, my foundation. I took a liking to live fire training, and I was really exposed to some just phenomenal live fire training right out of the gate. We had these guys that retired from the department that I worked for, the Everett Fire Department, and they were running the Washington State Fire Academy at the time. And the Washington State Fire Academy was a really good, well-known program. I went through it, and when they were up there running it, they were really doing live fire training that, as far as I know, wasn't really being done at the level that they were doing it anywhere else. The sheer volume, I mean, you're up there for 14 weeks or whatever it was, and you're burning constant. I mean, it's like, 2, 3, 4 days a week, you're burning constantly. And the burns that they were doing were like, they were very well thought out and constructed burns. And one of the foundations of those guys kind of teaching methodologies was teaching based on recognition prime decision making.
Okay.
And and so they were very intentional about the slides that they were trying to develop in us. Now, where I kind of diverged from, I heard like when you were talking with Kyle was talking about thermal balance firefighting, and that's really where like my roots lies in thermal balance firefighting. And I've like, definitely divorced myself from that, but it's been a long journey. And I'm
so
really
just to get, like you started with like a TZO 30-degree fog power cone attack. Don't upset.
Don't upset the thermal balance, right? You've got the neutral plane. You don't want to apply too much water because you're going to drop that neutral plane. It's going to, steam out victims and harm victims. And, really what that was kind of, so that was essentially being taught up there at the time. And I would separate the fire behavior and the fire attack. Like the fire behavior that we were getting up there was phenomenal. The fire attack stuff, it wasn't. It was thermal balance firefighting. And it's thermal balance firefighting, the way that it's really taught here in the US, is like a bastardized version of some snippets from like, 3D firefighting. And then it's kind of us taking some bullet points and then misapplying them in a bastardized fashion, and then creating this abortion of a fire attack would be how I would describe it.
And I'm going to interrupt you and say, if you want to hear a lot more about that, you can catch the Swedish Fire Nerds podcast, where you talk for like 4 hours on this topic.
So, probably way too long. But.
No, it was, I didn't even get, but yes, go. Sorry.
When you invest that much time into something, and like, here we go, somebody wants to talk to me about it. So it's a lot of hours of my life that, but it contributes to the journey, right? And I think overall, I'm very thankful that I went through that, because it made me so much more understanding and so much more convicted in how I do things now. And so when I was going through that program, I made it a point to seek out the guys that were teaching afterwards. And I wasn't working for Everett Fire yet, but I knew like someday I want to go work for these guys. And the reason being was like Everett, for the people who aren't familiar with this area, Everett's kind of like this, it's this like gritty kind of, it's this gritty old city that's, it's about 120,000 people. We got 6 stations. And it's just kind of like this little hole that burns a lot. And it's like it's like a bunch of kind of like, it's kind of one of the last strongholds of old school firefighting ground.
Okay.
Is how I would
put it. Yeah.
And so I was like, man, I want to go work there. Like, it's small enough to where you kind of know everybody, but it's really, a really busy place. Like I want to go work, and those guys, like, they know their stuff. So I want to go learn from them. Right. And so I was fortunate enough when I went through, I got hired with Everett, and I actually got, one of my first assignments was on a truck company with, one of the guys that was teaching up there. He was a captain. And so just being able to run fires with him and pick his brain about how people learn and about live fire training. And then on their off days, when they would be teaching, I would be going out, and I was like, hey man, I'll stack pallets, I'll hang OSB, like I'll do all the grunt work. Like, just, can I hang out with you guys?
Right.
Can I just whatever it takes? Right. I don't want to teach anything. I got nothing to teach. I just want to like put in work so I can absorb all the information. So that's kind of how I got my start. And really, those guys, credit to them, like they were so forthcoming with their information, and not just the information, but how to teach it. Right. Mm-hmm. And they were kind of the ones that really initially plugged in my brain. Like, it's not just about the information. If you want to teach it, you have to learn how to teach the information to people, which is a whole different skill set.
Nice. That's nice. Which comes to the see it, hear it, feel it, know what to do about it.
Yeah, exactly. And, with the RPD, like you can go, I love going down the rabbit holes of like how people learn. And especially coming from like a background, I was fortunate growing up. I was able to play some sports at some pretty high levels growing up, and I was exposed to like some really good coaching.
Right.
And so then when I got into the fire service, when I got into the fire service, like the first academy that I went through, I remember I had like one guy that I would say was a really good instructor. And what made him a good instructor was that he challenged me. Like he came up and he said, "Hey, you're not doing so great," right? I was like the only guy with no experience. I was falling behind people. He said, "You're not doing so great. Like if you want to get better at this, then I'm here. Come in when I'm on shift. I'll train with you as much as you want to train. I'll do whatever it takes. And if I don't know something, then I won't BS you. Like we'll learn it together."
Wow,
right. And so
wow.
he was humble and he like ignited me. Right. And so that combination of things, plus I'm super competitive. I don't want to suck.
Right, right.
I know I'm the worst in the class. Like it's no news to me. And so then that combination of things kind of kicked me into high gear, right? And I think that he didn't understand like my level of obsession that when I lock on
like
something.
when he said, "Come on up." Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't realize what he was in for, right? But the other thing that I noticed was a lot of the instructors, like they didn't convey information well. They just said, "Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. Don't end up on YouTube," right? Here's like, and it wasn't clear. Everything was like, "Oh, it's conditions dependent." And you ask a question like, "Oh, well, when would I do, X, Y, and Z?" They say, "Well, it's conditions dependent." Like, well, what conditions does it depend on?
Right, right.
Like I don't need somebody to sit there and tell me do X, Y, and Z, and then it's conditions dependent. I'm looking to you as the instructor to tell me what conditions.
What conditions? Yes. Yes.
And I think that that's a pretty pervasive thing in the fire service because, like, here I am talking on a podcast. I'm going to say this, like, everybody wants to have a voice, right? But not everybody's worth listening to. And I mean, shoot, I don't even know if I'm worth listening to, right? But I think what it comes down to is the good instructors are people who can take those concepts and go beyond its conditions dependent, right? It's not that is never the answer, but that should cause a red flag to go up when you hear it's conditions dependent or it's staffing dependent or it's something dependent. You go, okay, red flag. Like, what conditions? Tell me.
Right.
Right. Because ultimately, I'm going to show up on a fire at 2:30 in the morning, and I'm going to see conditions, and I need to make a call on what to do. I'm either taking a left or taking a right at the Y in the road.
Based on those conditions. So please explain to me how to read them.
Right.
No, absolutely.
So, yeah. And so the intentionality behind what those guys talking about RPD slides and whatnot, they were like very intentional about, I want to show you this set of conditions, and then I want you to do this based on that set of conditions. Had a huge impact on my career because I was like, okay, well, that's what I was coached. That's how.
No, absolutely. This is fascinating to me because I want to know how much that shaped your teaching style moving forward. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, it immensely. Like it was one of those things where at the time I couldn't explain it, but I knew it felt right.
Right.
So yeah, the RPD, and you go down that kind of rabbit hole of people talk about realistic training, right? Which in a live fire environment, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding and really there's just a lot of misunderstanding about, there's like this blanket term of realistic live fire training. So what you'll have like, okay, we've got a concrete burn building, and we're going to do quote unquote realistic live fire training. So we're going to, set a bunch of pallets on fire. Well, we have to be really careful how we use the term realistic live fire training, because just because there's fire doesn't mean it's realistic. Right. And like propane fires, right? Or LPG props and all that kind of stuff. Now, that doesn't mean they're not useless. You just have to be very transparent, knowledgeable, and convey to the students about what parts about it are quote unquote realistic, what parts about it are not. And the more transparent you are, like the more trust you earn with the students as well.
Nice.
And you have to be careful that you're not creating training scars. Like with a with a concrete building, it's not trashing your facility when you tell the recruits or the students or whoever it is, like, hey, the ceiling doesn't burn, the walls don't burn, we can't get the floor to burn in here. Like, this building is designed for just a contents fire.
Right.
And likely it's going to be a very clean burning, lean contents fire. So we're going to be able to show you guys, here's what we can show you. We can show you heat. We can show you a lot of radiant energy transfer, that's super valuable.
Yes.
Like, radiant energy transfer is the thing that our gear is the worst against. Right. So we should be striving to keep a good distance from radiant energy. So we can show those things. What we can't show, where like concrete specifically falls short, is when you start applying water, you create a ton of humidity, right?
It's a swamp,
yeah. And that's where a lot of the thermal balance stuff kind of was born from. I'll call it, like, it was built to fix a problem in a prop. Nice. Right?
No, 100%. Yeah. Makes sense. So, I mean, I'm not like
Yeah. I mean, you take it to the real world, and I mean, and this is something I think that's becoming a little bit more of like a well-known thought process. Like, yeah, that's not how real buildings behave. So don't train to beat the prop, right? Use the prop to enhance. There are things about that prop that are inherent strengths, and there's a lot of inherent weaknesses, but you capitalize on those inherent strengths of that prop, and then the weaknesses, be transparent with them so that the recruits don't log away an RPD slide, or the students don't log away an RPD slide, because they're just thinking realistic live fire training. Woo! Like they're going after it, right? Like they don't know any better, and I didn't either.
Right. So, no, 100%. And just recognizing the limitations of each style of training facility, and recognizing and communicating, is that the key?
Yeah, recognizing, communicating, and then designing your drills to capitalize on those inherent strengths. Like in a concrete burn building, I'm going to tell the nozzleman, hey, I want, like, when you come into this big room, we're going to go through a door, we're going to go into big room here. And even though there is not it's like a cleaner, leaner fire, and you see a bunch of, like, orange down at the end coming out of a doorway or something like that, even though there's not a bunch of smoke accumulated, because I can't generate that much smoke with that facility, I can't make a really, like, rich, snotty looking fire. What I want you to do is I want you to go through this door. I want you to hang on the left. I want you to take the shape of the box with your stream, work that stream back wall to wall, sweep the floor. I know it's going to generate a lot of humidity. I want you to feel for that doorway, keep your stream on that doorway that the fire's coming out of, and make your push down towards that room. And you're going to have people, like, mainly it's going to be your seasoned experienced folks, who'd be like, what? Like, why would I do that? The reason why you do that in that prop is because there was heat at the like there was plenty of heat at the ceiling. It was just clean and lean. Right. There was a ton of heat. And what I want that person, that nozzleman, to build is I want them to build a rhythm, right? Because what you fall back on a fire, like when you're amped up and you're on the nozzle and all that kind of stuff, you fall back on a rhythm. And I want them to program that rhythm into their playbook, so that when they go on that fire, they have that rhythm to fall back on.
When there is that chunky smoke and the heat.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
No, it's beautiful.
So you're taking that prop, and you don't have to fight that fire in that prop like that to put the fire out. But, like, newsflash, that fire, you could just let it burn for 6 hours and it's going to go out. Like, there's nothing you can't do to make that fire not go out, right?
Right.
So it's not about the prop. It's about the end result, which is that person going out the field making a good decision.
No, I like it. All right, catching you up. We've got people chiming in. Approachability, tact, and being open with your new guys is huge if you want them to learn. Sounds basic, but it's somewhat people struggle with. Be assertive, but be approachable as well. That's from Aaron Jackson. Tony Nunes said, sorry I'm late. Welcome, Tony. Brian Chambers, props can be detrimental depending on the desired outcome. we'll discuss. Joey Hayes, we need more acquired to burn. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, so
And he did say it. He did say we need more acquired structures to burn, question mark. So
I would say, like, in an ideal world, so here's the thing about acquired structures. Yes, like, I think with acquired structures, there is more often than not a perception that, like, in different areas, like, oh, we can't burn. We're not going to be able to burn acquired structures. And they'll give, our department or our, whatever, clean air agency or whatever it is, there's kind of a perception. I would say that more often than not, that is a false perception. And it's just because, like, it's the firefighter telephone game where some chiefs, unless they're really motivated to do acquired structure training, you got to remember, like, they're the person in the hot seat. And that's a daunting task if you've never done it before, to take an acquired structure and to go out, do all the paperwork, and then conduct this burn in a building that now the walls, the ceiling, that everything does actually light off. Like, you can make it flash over, all that kind of stuff. Like, there are more risks associated with acquired structure training. That's not to say that it's dangerous, because it's not. But when you think about it from, like, a guy who it's his personal well-being on the line, like, did he chase that opportunity down aggressively, or did he kind of, like, give it the old college try a little bit?
No, you make a great point. I want to capitalize on it because I think it was Shannon Stone last week who said, it's easy to make decisions when you're sitting in the back seat looking backwards. It's when when it's your decision to make, it's a lot tougher, and you don't understand until you get there. So it's right along the same lines.
So I think one of my biggest recommendations with this is that, one, it's incredibly valuable. And the way that we do it, like for our fire academy and for our companies, is we combine training in a Connex box, like FDTN style facility, which is fantastic because what that provides is high repetition, and we can build rhythm in high repetition with very, very low risk, like almost no risk in that environment, right? Because you're dealing with contents fires and burn cans. So it's high repeatability. Now, there are some things that you sacrifice in those kind of structures, which is they're atypical layouts, right? So the way the building feels with your stream, the stream sounds, the way the building reacts to your stream, all that kind of stuff, it's not going to be what you find in the real world exactly. You can get it kind of close, but it's never going to be 100%. And that's okay, because you don't need it to be, because what we're trying to do at that stage is we're trying to take people, we're trying to program a rhythm, and we're trying to teach them the mechanics. I liken it to when you rub your belly and pat your head. Like, the Connex boxes are rubbing your belly, and then the acquired structure is when we add pat the head. You start one before the other. We build the rhythm and the progression in the Connex boxes. We get you rep. It's like a batting cage, right? And then we go into the acquired structure where it's low reps. We're talking about 6 to 8 burns a day is all, but every single one of them, we're driving rooms to flashover, extending out to the hallway, and we're letting it develop past what you're able to do in the Connex boxes. We're staging groups around to be able to be in the environment during the push and be able to experience the push as it's happening. And so the reps are a lot lower, so you can't count on getting great realistic fires in acquired structure and get everybody through the reps. It's just not going to work. You're going to burn. You get typically 1 and maybe 2 burns. Like, on a rare occasion, you'll get 3 burns out of a room, but typically, like, 2 is the most you can expect. So if you can stagger them like that, you take, okay, here's the methodologies that we're programming in your brain here in the Connex boxes. We're getting the reps,
Right.
but there's always that little like 1% people's heads of like, they know it's a prop, right? And this is how my brain works. Like I've always been, Jay, the sky's blue. Well, why? Right? Well,
right.
Okay, you've got me in a prop. I know that's not somebody's house. I know that's not, whatever. So is this going to work? Right. And so with the thermal balance firefighting, like that's a whole different rabbit trail of like my first fire and showing up to that one. But and a lot of the way that I teach is based off of my disconnect between how I was trained in thermal balance firefighting and showing up to my first fire. But when you go into the acquired structure, it's like everybody, you see them leave those fires with this confidence, like, I just watched it work on a real fire in a real building, boom, 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 got it. It's locked in for good. Right.
No, absolutely.
So if you can do both, it's just fantastic. And again, the perception is that more often than not that it's unachievable. I would say more often than not that's a false perception. But like you're saying, it's easy to make the call from the cheap seats. You have to understand that from a training chief's perspective, it's him on the line or her on the line, right? It's that training chief on the line or whatever that position is. You're down here in the cheap seats. You just want to make it go.
Right.
Now, what they need from you, even if you know them really well, right? You've been buddies for a long time, all that kind of stuff. They came up through the ranks. Like what they need from you is you're sitting out here barking, we need this acquired structure program. They need to see the nuts and bolts and like this well-formed, well-formulated idea of this fantastic structure of what those burns are going to look like, right? If they're going to do all the work and hang themselves out there, they want to know that when you show up to teach, that it's not just about roasting helmets and getting a bunch of cool videos and all that kind of stuff. Like that's not going to fly, right? Why would I hang myself out there for that? So there's a trust dynamic, and even if they're not telling you that, the way to alleviate it is you cannot do it alone. It takes a team. It takes a cadre. For us, when we burn, it takes a minimum of 6 people, and that's like a well-dialed cadre. Like if it's your first few times of burning, it's going to take about 10 people. So, and there's different positions that those people have to fill in order to make this burn go well. It's not just one guy showing up like, all right, I'm going to lead the charge here. Right. You're going to fail miserably. So, and then it's going to cause that guy to trust you even less.
Right. And it's detrimental and not effective. I've got a question coming at you from Lamar Green. He wants to know, what's the best way to help build real sim when all you have is the concrete building?
Yeah. Well, so I think it's first off, divorce yourself from the idea of real is one of the first things. So kind of start to pull back from, I want to make this real, because you're not going to make that concrete building behave like if my bedroom that I'm sitting in is on fire. You're just not going to do it. And that's okay, because you don't need to do it, right? You don't have to do it in that setting. Now, what you can do is you can build the rhythm and the tempo, and you can expose people to radiant line of sight energy, which they should take out with their nozzle. You want to kind of reverse engineer it, say, okay, what are the well, I'll just take a concrete building since that's what he's asked about. So with a concrete building, I can generate, and it depends on how your building is laid out, because a lot of them are laid out to do a lot of things poorly, right? They're not laid out to do one thing well. Right, which the one thing, if I could choose one thing, it would be compartmentalize it, make hallways, bedrooms, like make it like a house, right? But most of them, they're pretty wide open. So if you can compartmentalize it in a way that is not, you're not trying to add a ton of friction points for your nozzle, because you don't want to turn it into a hose movement drill. You want to turn it into a batting cage repetition for your people. And the more friction points you add, the more it kind of swings into a hose movement drill. Right. Okay. And then your nozzle, what suffers is your nozzleman suffers, right? Because now they're not going to get a good clean rep fighting fire, because they're pulling hose, right? So the hose movement drills, you can do a hose movement drill out on the pavement anytime, any place, anywhere. When you're in the live fire environment, the hose movement takes a back seat to, okay, I'm going to take this nozzle, this firefighter and put them on a nozzle. And what I want them to do is and this, comes like straight from fields. I love this, is we move through the building in three ways. We either move, we hit and move, or we push, right?
Okay.
And what I can do in a concrete building is I can give them move, like we're going to duck walk in, drop down, start cooling high, work down range to low, take the shape of the box, sweep the floor, stuff it in the room, finish off with a push. So move into push. And then I go from move into a hit and move into a push, which would be like, I'm going to move into a junction. I'm going to have a corner. I'm going to rent that corner, right? I'm going to hit it, boom, 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 with a good solid. We tell our guys 10 seconds. So whenever you do a hit and move, it's 10 seconds. And the reason 10 is because in the real world, it's about half. And what we're finding is we're like, hey, hit it for 5 seconds. And you have these guys go in there seconds. Like, yeah.
They're penciling.
Boom.
Yeah.
Exactly. Which in our region, we're trying to get away from that.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a little bit region specific, but we say 10 seconds of water, which sometimes can feel uncomfortably long in the training environment. You just have to have faith that realistically, when they go to a fire, it's going to be half that. So I move, I hit it, shut it down, jam up to the corner, finish off the room with a push. And you're in a concrete building, you can build the fire. You want to limit the backside ventilation to try to pull that fire internally as best you can. Okay. Have somebody stand by on the backside vent. As soon as they hear water start flowing, pop the backside vent open. Not because it's realistic to have a vent person standing there right there. It's because of the unrealistic amount of humidity that gets generated when you're applying water to a exothermic box that you can't make.
Opening that exhaust kind of makes it a little more realistic.
A little bit more, right?
The term realistic being relative.
Yeah, exactly. And like the realistic side is on a real fire, you're going to get enough cooling that's going to contract, even with no backside ventilation. You're going to get contraction and lift, even if it's not like visibility, right? Because they're not exactly the same thing. You're going to get a change of conditions that are going to move ahead with your nozzle as you gain ground. And the only way to simulate that in a concrete building is to pop that backside vent, right?
Sure.
So that's what, and then you move from move to push, move, hit, move, push, and then you can go hit and move into push from the front, from the front door, hit it, shut down, move forward, finish off with a push. So you build those 3 scenarios, and it's rep, and you have them. The one thing in the concrete buildings is you can train stream reach, right? You shouldn't see them crawling under fire because it's such a clean burning fire. Even with OSB, like we use so much OSB, it's unreal up here. And even in concrete buildings, it's hard to generate like thick smoke. They just burn too hot. So you have to account for that, have them use their stream reach and really emphasize that, so that when they do go into that limited visibility, that skill carries forward.
Right. No, you talked about the parking lot slapping the ground as a rhythm. Yeah. No, I love that because we get out and flow, and that's one of the things we do. You want to hear that you want to hear that sound, and you're slapping the ground, and it's driving that habit.
Yeah, it's the audible feedback.
Right.
With the boom, 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 boom. Well, it's the only thing to hit with the stream when you're in a parking lot.
Right.
So you have to lock that one away. That at the end of the day, in a residential building, it's far more often where your water is going is key, right? At the end of the day, like that's what matters in a residential building. The volume is not usually a big, like we're in the American Fire Service, we're flowing enough volume. It's more of a placement problem. And if you're just slapping the nozzle around like this, you're not placing it where it needs to go. It's like trying to put out a campfire by doing this, boom, boom, boom. Like,
I
no,
like it.
the fire's right there, dude.
Nice. Okay, I'm gonna catch you up here because we got tons of people saying stuff. I'll start with Sean Duffy. He said, ultimately, I think understanding how to create effective fire behavior by utilizing different fuel packages and controlling openings effectively. A 3-pallet fire in a triangle with half bale of hay will never accomplish that. Also, learning how to properly stoke a smoke barrel is essential. Throwing wet hay in a barrel and walking away doesn't cut it. It's constant work to generate the smoke necessary. Solid points.
Yeah, absolutely.
Michael Eulenfeld Jr. said, that's right, get rid of penciling, open and flow. I think we can all pretty much agree that that's almost a training scar at this point. Does anybody disagree with that point? Maybe Europe, I'm not sure. Penciling in training is one of the worst habits used in a burn building and some acquired structures that I've seen probies do in real-world firefighting. All they've ever been told is pencil, 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 don't put the fire out. And when the real world comes, they don't even put the nozzle when it's needed. That's from Cameron Harward. Let me get it right. All right, awesome. Take the ridge. That's from James Nisbet, who also requested that Jay have no pants on, but that makes me uncomfortable. So,
hey man, it's all in how you cut the screen. I can take my pants off, James. No problem.
Not so I'm going to ask you this question. You have a blank check and carte blanche to build a perfect program, which you've kind of done, but I still want to just throw this question at you and say, blank check, carte blanche, what is the perfect program you would build?
Talking like Recruit Academy.
Yes, let's throw that on there so it's easier for you to. I mean, you can add any restrictions you want from this point forward, but it's blank check, carte blanche, go.
Well, yeah. So one thing, man, this is such a big subject. One thing right out of the gate is you have to be extremely intentional about how you build your cadre. Like that has to come before anything. You have to force people to pick a discipline, I think, whether it's, engine or truck or whatever. And the reason being is that there's a lot of folks who are, they're the hooligans of the fire service. They do it all. And, whatever, like they want to do it all. Right. And some of them don't do any of it well, but they just want to do it all. But at any rate, when you're teaching stuff in a Recruit Academy, like you want people who are like their minds are in that discipline. And I understand that like what you may end up with is a guy who is maybe confined to engine company operations, but he really likes teaching VES stuff too, and he's actually really good at it.
Right.
And that's fine. And he can be good at it outside of the academy, but I want you focusing on engine company operations because it opens up another spot for somebody to become really good at vent enter search. What you end up when you build a really successful program, like what we're ending up with right now is this log jam of fantastic instructors because we've got a really good program and a lot of people want to come teaching it. And I actually just this last academy, I was like, hey, I've been doing this for a long time and I love it, but I'm holding down a spot, and that's sacrificing somebody from being able to have the opportunities that I had, which was those guys got out of my way and let me come in and make it my own. Like I'm doing that right now. I'm log jamming.
Right
so
on.
But next academy, I'm out, man. And we've got guys that are like ready, chomping at the bit to take over. And I need to get out of their way and let them, because I moved the needle a little bit. Me and the other guys, like I moved the ball 5 yards downfield. Take it over, man. Move it 10 yards downfield, whatever. But they're going to take what we did and build off of it from a different perspective. So I think you have to be very intentional about the culture you build in your cadre. And starting out with your recruits, there's kind of the downfall to teaching a high level of engine. I'll just speak from the engine side because that's what I teach. the downfall to like a really high functioning, high operating engine company curriculum is it's incredibly physically toll. It takes a huge physical toll on people, and we bang people up really, really well throughout the course of our 4 weeks of engine company stuff, because you're crawling, you're flowing. It's 4 weeks of just constant water. You're wet, you're crawling, you're flowing, you're pushing, it's just rep. And so on the front end of it, your hiring process needs to reflect that. And it's something that I think that we really struggled with in the front end. We went through this period where we were doing a really good job, and then we stopped doing such a great job, and now we're starting to pick back up again. We're starting to hire some killers, and I think that you need to be aware of what you need to hire in the front end, because to put somebody through that abuse physically for 4.5 weeks, it's hard on the instructors. Like, I'll finish out the 4.5 weeks and my knees are bloody and my gear's thrashed, and it's just like it's a dogfight to get through it. And so that there's a little bit of a structure that has to happen ahead of time with the conditioning. You have to get a lot of pre-academy conditioning built in, and then when you go through the program, everything that we do is structured intentionally to create a reaction under stress and duress.
Nice.
If that makes sense.
No, you're talking Grossman, so I love it.
Yeah, exactly. You have to understand that everything that you say, everything that you do, every drill that you do is getting locked away in somebody who has no frame of reference, or maybe they have some, but it's very little. And my job is to not, I don't want to give you tools for the toolbox, right? Like, that's garbage. If I'm just giving you a bunch of tools for a toolbox, what I'm doing is I'm hampering your ability to make decisions under stress and duress. I'm overloading you. I'm giving you too many options. And there's like that whole saying about, in the beginner's mind, there are many options, but in the expert's mind, there are few.
Right.
And it's my job as the expert, quote unquote, to show you the few options, because you're going to show up, you're going to be jacked up, you're going to have a bunch of fire, people screaming, all that kind of stuff. And I need you to stick your foot in the ground and go decisively and with incredible aggression towards an objective, right? And I want you to do it with confidence. I don't want you to show up and have I need to size up the building with my, all these different size up acronyms. And I don't want you like accumulating all this information. Like, I'm going to take the information that you're going to show up to, and I'm going to distill it down to an actionable, see it, hear it, feel it, go, kind of a decision-making point. So like, for instance, your size up from the tailboard is bayonet going below me or above me. That's it. Where's the fire band? Where's it going?
Okay, so I was going to say, repeat that, because I heard been at going. Yep. I like it. Yeah, just straight up bag. I like, yeah.
Yep, bag it, been at going, and then did it start below, in the above, or was it next to your start? Like, that's all I want for my size up, from the nozzle person's perspective. Right. And so that gives you something very clear, very concise.
I'm going to back you up. I'm going to back you up because I really want to catch that. You said bag, and I love bag, been at going, but then you had the 3. What was the 3? Because you had exterior in, what was it? Go ahead. Up, down?
Below, above, or outside.
I like it. All right. Sorry, I wanted to write that down.
All right, no worries.
Continue. I didn't mean to derail you.
Yeah. And so what the reason being is that that is designed for your nozzle firefighter to be used in conjunction with your officer's 360. Like, neither of those are supposed to be independent of each other. I don't believe they're supposed to be used to complement each other. The officer does a 360. The nozzle firefighter, like, I have a limited view. When I step off the tailboard, I stretch off the back of the rig, and as I encroach on that building, as I approach the building, my view is getting narrower and narrower and narrower until I culminate at the front door of that building, right? I'm also probably going to be the first eyes on the inside of that building. right? So if we've got fire showing out of floor 2 window on the A side, right, and I'm entering on floor 1 through the front door, and the officer's zooming around on his 360, and I open up that front door, and I've got a bunch of smoke on floor 1, right, and he's just thinking, oh, it's on floor 2, it's on floor 2, it's on
Right.
floor 2, and all of a sudden he zooms around to floor 1. I'm like, Cap, there's a bunch of smoke on 1, like it's either below us or it's right, like they're
Right.
used in
Yeah.
conjunction
Yeah.
with each other. So the main thing in a residential fire that we articulate to the recruits is, if the fire is not below you and it didn't start on the exterior of the building. So if you have that door, and this is straight from, Scott Corrigan really helped simplify this. Like, if you have an intake, it's on your level. I don't care where that intake is, right? If it's super low, it's just snotty cranking, like corkscrew intake all across the ground, I'll probably start hitting it from here. That's about the only thing that matters to me. But if I have an intake and an exhaust, it's on my level. If it's all exhaust, it's below me, or it's wind driven. If it's all intake, it's going up, right?
Wow.
So boom, boom, boom.
No, that's awesome, man. And it's applicable. That's the best part.
It is. And what it does is when you have like the guts to step out on the limb and tell somebody that, and to teach that, right? Like,
right.
This is how it is, right? I'm telling you. And you know what? Like, is there a chance I could be wrong in some scenario? Absolutely. But what I'm not going to cover all of the tools in the toolbox, all of the options. I'm going to cover the most probable, so that when you show up and you open that door and you're like, boom, I got an intake across the ground. It's snotty, it's nasty. Hit it, fall back on my rhythm. Hit it, boom, 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 boom. Wash it down, shut that line down, move in, take my angle, boom, make the push. Now they're falling back on a rhythm, and they're doing it with confidence, because I told them as an instructor, like, this is what is happening, go, right? Not, here's a bunch of options, here's a bunch of considerations, where they're going to be like, what was that? What was that thing I was supposed to, I think this is happening. Like, no, it's not up. What's happening? Go.
Yes, I'm fired up. I'm ready to come take a class. So, yes. All right, catching you up. I don't even know. There's so many comments coming at you. Rob Fisher said, love what you say here, Jay. Develop the future instructors and let them roll with it exponentially. This has many positive impacts in our region. Thanks for all you have done in our county, brother.
Let me pause you on Rob real quick, because Rob did that for me. Like, Rob is one of my initial mentors.
Nice.
That like, let me, he let me run, right? So Rob paid it to me. I'm going to pay it back to the guy behind me, and it's going to go so on and so forth. So thanks, Rob.
10 pounds of pressure 100% of the time. That's the one I got from IQ. Yeah, that's it. So, Brian Chambers said, when the 10 millimeter socket is the most used, why would we need the 4 millimeter?
Speaking mechanic there.
Teach what you can while you can. Company officers are going to want the job done their way no matter how you teach them, just the nature of the beast. So this was a question that came from Scott Burgart, and it's a I'll throw it at you, see what you do with it. The problem we are having in our department is continuity. We have 6 company officers that all have their own methods. No matter if it is water supply, engine, or truck ops, how do you teach so students are not confused on what they need to do?
So you pick a way. Like, I've run into this more times than I can count. And here's the deal: you pick a way, and you be fully transparent with those recruits. Like, you're gonna go out there. I'm gonna teach you a plan, right? And I'm gonna teach you a bunch of reactions that I want you to have. And I am 100% convicted that, that as far as my knowledge base goes, which I'm a fallible person, but I'm gonna tell you, like, I was hired to be the expert to teach you this. So let's get after this.
Nice.
This is how you respond to these different scenarios. Boom, 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 boom. And you take the time to spell them out, like, emphatically. And then, you know what, you're going to go out there and you might have a captain that tells you to do X, Y, or Z different. And if it's reactively, like after the fact, okay, you know what, Cap, whatever you want, like, that's whatever you want, I'll do it your way. If they didn't tell you ahead of time, at least you have a plan to fall back on. So what usually happens is those recruits. So I've got this story that I love. This guy that works for an agency south of me, and he had this essentially this kind of a situation where he sent me a message telling me about this fire, and I was super proud of him. They did a great job. It was him and another one of our recruits on the line. And from what it sounds like, their officer was kind of in that boat where he didn't, like, they didn't have a lot of continuity on the rigs that he was working on in that station. But in the absence of a clear plan, the most decisive person, everybody's just going to fall in line behind him.
Right on.
Right. And sometimes that's going to be a recruit. And if it's my recruit, like, they're damn well going to be the most decisive.
I love that confidence, man.
Right?
I do. That's awesome.
So, like, they're going to get off the rig and they're just going to start going to work. And you know what happens more often than not is their officer's going to be like, oh yeah, I guess we'll do that. Yeah. Oh, hey, nice. So this guy got off the rig, they stretched the line. They got 4 rooms going, and he ended up just basically pulling to the front door. He's got like half the house on fire. And from the front door, he starts taking the dogs for the walk. Right. And he just starts working his way in. He just takes it one room at a time. He's got another recruit backing him up. And the officer didn't say much. He's just kind of like, he didn't tell them to go do it. They just started going. Right. And like, this is something I learned from one of my favorite captains I've ever worked for. He's going to retire within about the next year, but I've learned so much from him, and he's just like an old school blue collar guy, which him and I clicked right away. And one of his things, like, Jay, I want you to be like a dog on the end of the leash, like, go, and I should have to be pulling you back. Right. And I love that mentality of go. I want to be pulling on the leash a little bit. Right. I don't want somebody that I have to tell to go.
Right on.
And so you end up with recruits that are going to go with conviction, and it's not dangerous. Like, we're arming them with good tools to be able to stay safe. They know how to keep the line open. They know how to be heavy handed. They know how to make sure the fire's not below them. They know how to sound as they're going. Like, if there is something that they're walking into, it's your job as the officer to bark at them and tell them to come back, and they're listening for it. They know how to listen for it. So, but you're priming a decisiveness that, if I'm being honest, I think is lacking in a lot of areas of the fire service.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Love it. And I will go, and I will say this is push, and I don't want to piss anybody off, but push for SOPs, push for SOGs. No SOP or SOG will replace a thinking firefighter or a thinking officer making a decision. But when you push for those, you will get consistency on the starting point of where you're going to start making your decisions from. And so you can point at any line of duty, death, NIOSH report, and you can find a lack of SOPs and SOGs in a lot of those as reasons to get those started. So it's a good way to get consistency in a department that is fractured and has no leadership that says this is the way we're doing it. So, and then you have to be a doer and get those written, at which point you get a lot of direction in what gets written if you're a doer. Anyway, so.
Yeah, and you get the kind of, to put a bow on that one, like, you open the door, because that in that fire where that guy, he knee walked those 4 rooms, he crushed it, he did an awesome job, and it's full credit to him. What he did was he started a conversation, because his officers were like, that was cool. I like that.
Right.
I want some of that. Right now, his officers showing up to classes and stuff. So the water boils from the bottom, like is said by many.
Right on. Right on. Travis Cooley chimes in and says, if you are an officer and do not set expectations, then do not bitch when it's not done your way. Chances are that officer doesn't have a way of doing it anyway.
That's right.
That's right on.
That's exactly it.
All right, I'm throwing other questions at you here, and I wanted to get to this one, so I don't want to. We've already been going an hour. Are you good? I don't want to. I mean, okay. March 30th, Engine Company Resurrection. I actually have a link here. I'm going to copy it. I actually put it in my notes so I could copy it and paste it for everybody because I loved this thing. Getting my copy, throwing it in here. You don't have to go read it right now, but I'm just giving it to you guys for reference. I might not even post. Okay, anyway, there it is. Okay, good. Anyway, pulling back up. Mission creep.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, I love this article. I want you to talk about it, where it came from, what you were thinking.
All right. So this one's kind of been brewing for a little while. It's like where my head's been at mostly lately. So I've been in the group Leadership Under Fire. If you guys aren't familiar with them, I cannot recommend Jason Bresler and Leadership Under Fire. I'm in their online leadership course right now, and it is like I think it's an 8 or 10 week program or whatever it is, and we just had our last meeting a couple nights ago.
Nice.
Probably the best class I've ever taken in the fire service so far.
Wow,
like,
that's high praise.
I'm serious, man. Like, as far as from an intellectual standpoint of making you think, it's those guys do a phenomenal job, and so I've been kind of immersed in that, and I took it pretty seriously with their required reading and whatnot. I'm kind of a book nerd, and I enjoyed a lot of their required reading, and a lot of what they talk about is risk, and a lot of what we've been dwelling on is risk, and how do you can you quantify risk? The answer is no. Like, you can't like, there's a think tank, like I referenced in that document, that worked for 4 years. They were hired to define risk, and they worked for 4 years, this think tank full of huge brains in academia, and they could not define risk. And then, like, you take that to the fire service, essentially what their end definition, their end word was, they said risk should be left to be defined up to the individual, and even that is troublesome because each individual is going to have a different lens through the risk. So essentially what they said was, you can't define it, right? And so in the fire service, a lot of our conversations have been around is like, how do you mentally deal with risk when that is being, like, shoved down our throats in the fire service day in, day out? 100%. Risk a lot to save a lot, all that, right? And then, like, what does shoving that down your firefighters' throats, what does that do to them? And so again, like, trying to plug them, if you haven't taken their stuff, go do it, like, now. But it's really got my gears spinning about this topic. And a lot of these, like, problems that I've been trying to fix in our area, really a lot of them stem from this misunderstanding of risk. And you have these people, like, with thermal balance firefighting, for instance, you have a generation of firefighters in our area that was taught not to use the reach of their stream. They were taught to not flow water. They were taught to get as close as they can, to limit their water application, to all that kind of stuff. Right. And it was rooted in good intentions, which was to positively affect the victim. The problem was that doesn't actually happen that way, right? And so even though it's rooted in good intentions, I commend the guys that taught it, because they thought they were doing good. I commend them in that area. They did the best they could with what they had. What you have is this generation of firefighters that was taught how to fight fire improperly, and basically essentially hedge their bets on their gear, protecting them enough to where they get to the fire, to the seat of the fire, to darken it down before they get saturated. So you have this generation of folks who have been, like, getting beat by heat. And of course, when you look through it through that lens, and then all of a sudden you introduce, like, exterior fire attack as the silver bullet and some of these other things. Of course, they're going to look at these other, again, I shouldn't have to preface this, but it's not that you don't ever do an exterior attack. There's a time and a place for it. But of course, they're going to look at things like that and go, that's better than getting my ass kicked inside, right?
Sure.
And you're like, dude, you don't have to get your ass kicked.
Especially if you're going in and penciling, right? No.
Exactly. So you have this generation of people who the lens they look at firefighting through is one where they're kind of getting their asses kicked, right? And so of course they're going to look at something at a building that's on fire and say that's risky, whereas I might look at it, or somebody else might look at it and be like, that? Are you kidding me? Like, what are you talking about, right? And so then when you turn around and organizationally you tell your people, risk a lot to save a lot. Right. And this is one of the things that Jason said right out of the gate in our class. He goes, what is a lot, Chief? Is that second degree burns? Is that third degree burns? Is that death? Like, define a lot. Right. You can't define a lot, then what is the point of even having this conversation? Because now, Corley's going to have a different, concept of 100%. What that is, or different understanding than I am, than he is. And we're all showing up to the same fire. So right out of the gate, we're shooting ourselves in the foot, right? And then at the end of the day, then we follow it up with all these like focuses on line of duty deaths and poor outcomes and everything else. And essentially what you program into firefighters is prevent defense, play not to lose. Well, the way to play not to lose is to friggin' stay out of the building and flow water while it burns down and crumbles in around you, right? Like that's how you play not to lose. But if we show up playing to win, that's a different mindset. So that's kind of where that whole article stemmed from, is seeing that news story that was kind of the genesis. And there's been others like it. And it's not picking on the department, and I don't need to know like every detail behind what they had when they showed up. And like at the end of the day, there's a statement in there about we're not going to risk our lives. And I saw a picture of the building afterwards. Like the building's not crumbling down. They said we're not going to risk our lives to go in there and when we don't know that there's somebody savable in there. And like, how do you know you're even risking your life, man?
Right. No, it's tough.
It's a tough thing to. So essentially, what the kind of advocacy is for is, let's stop framing up conversations around what we have to lose, and let's start framing up let's start looking at buildings from a what do we have to gain perspective.
Nice.
What can I do with this building, right? When you show up with that mindset, you look at buildings totally different.
Absolutely. 100%. And using an amorphous terminology to even frame the question to begin with. And so, and I want to read Scott Thompson's quote here because I love this. I hadn't heard this before. It actually stopped me, and I took an intake of breath. Prepare a lot to save a lot. Prepare a little to save a little. Don't prepare and save nothing. Dude, I love that.
Yeah. No, that's 100% it, right? And so when like bringing it back to preparation to training, if you're not training to the level, like you have to understand when you train firefighters that you have to train with the idea that or train them with the idea that like there's going to be a firefighter on the tip of a ladder who's going to be at the sill of a window looking into a room and going, can I get to the door before this room touches off? Right? Like when you think about fire behavior, so when I was taught fire behavior initially, it was like, here's the 3 methods of heat transfer, and here's BTUs, and here's this and that. That means nothing to me at that windowsill, right?
Right.
What means something to me at that windowsill is where's the fire been at and going, right? Is it in the hallway? Is the floor of the hallway burning? Because if the floor of the hallway is burning, like, can I even see it? If I'm zero vis in that room and it's thick and smoky and nasty, and I reach my hand in there and it's freaking hot as can be, I only have a few seconds, and I'm looking for, is there fingers coming through that fire? Because that means it's just about to light off.
You got seconds.
Off. You got seconds, right? And that, like, that's the read. And so you have to show that over and over and over again when you're training your firefighters to be able to get them to the level, because it's like watching like when you're a kid and you're trying to run across the street and you're seeing a car's coming, you're like, can I make it before the car hits me? Right? You're reading rate of change. That's what you're reading in that room. And so, like, in order to read rate of change, you have to have some frame of reference, some perspective to be able to build off of. And so I need to watch fires develop, and I need to watch smoke lean out and light off, right? I need to do that ahead of time, over and over and over again. And I need to see, like, hey, when this stuff starts to kind of finger through the smoke, I start to see little flames flickering through the smoke. This thing's going now. And as soon as this thing goes, the floor is going to touch off, and then the whole room's going to be on fire. I can't go, right? Or whatever, right? That's your go, no go.
Whatever the read is, right?
Whatever the read is, whatever you're looking at the car coming, and you want to, like, look at it coming from a ways away to judge the rate of speed. Okay, I can get across the street, right? But if you just stand there and you look like this, and that car's coming, boom, from that side, like, you can't judge the rate of speed. If that kind
no, it's a beautiful analogy, man, and it goes right back to, because the only way to build that is, what is it called? A ton of effort into preparation, which goes right to prepare a lot to save a lot. And that
Right.
yeah, well, it takes effort to get those kind of reps to actually build that preparation.
And you can do it like people, oh, you can't do it on video. Like, no, you can. You can watch videos. Like, that's why I pump out these videos all the time. You can watch game film and you can watch smoke light off on game film over and over and over again. You can watch rooms flash over, boom, 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 boom. Like, you just have to know what you're looking for. What I'm looking for is, like, at what point does that smoke look really nasty? Like, how long does that look at rooms when you're watching fire videos? Look at a room and say, how long does that room have? And then hopefully that video will find videos where it shows all the way through a room lighting off, and watch it, like, back it up 30 seconds, have somebody back it up 60 seconds or whatever, like have somebody back it up a certain amount of time, and you try to guess how much time till that thing lights off. And like, you're just getting that mental rep of watching smoke and heat kiss and hug in there and make fire in that room. And so that way you have a frame of reference for rate of change, which then translates to, I'm at the sill, can I go or not?
I don't think I love it. I'm smiling because I've never heard the fire tetrahedron described as a kissing and hugging, but I like
it's a crockpot, baby.
There, let's love it. I'm loving it. David Pruitt said the biggest risk we have is that we allow start-stop training to create such scars. Teach and train to completion. Show your crews what the end looks like and allow them to get there. Scott Thompson said, agree. Our size up needs to focus on searchable and savable based on our capabilities and not what is lost or has been consumed. No, it's good stuff. Yeah. Good comments. All right, I'm pulling up my notes here because I got to pull up my text message with you earlier because there was one thing I wanted to touch on before I dive off into what books we should read. So here we are. Bum, bum, bum. Ways the fire attack crew can support the search. A lot of good ground to cover. I wanted to bring that up, so I wanted to let you loose on that topic. And go.
All right. So this has been along with the risk stuff, which let me, before we dive into that here, one second. I've got a quote that I wrote down that I wanted to make sure that okay. Let me put a bow on that risk stuff real quick.
Okay, go for it. I didn't mean to cut you off if I did.
No, you're fine. This is my I told you I got like horrible ADHD, and so I'm like all over the place. And then later tonight, like I'll circle back to one of these with my wife and be like, oh, and
I should have said,
like, yeah, exactly.
My wife just smiles and nods at me. So,
oh man, she's good for putting up with me. So this one, when I was listening to Bresler talk the other night, this one really stuck out to me, just on the business of risk. He said, we're in the business of making outcomes what they ought to be, not what they statistically should be. And I really think like with all of this training stuff, one of the things that can't get lost is our moral obligation. Like, we focus a lot on statistics, we focus a lot on probabilities, all that kind of stuff, but we can't lose. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't fit on a pie chart or on a graph, and a lot of that is the kind of the intangible, and essentially like the moral reason for what the fire service is even there for.
Nice.
And like the fire service is there to look at whatever we show up to with what can be done right now. What is the best thing I can do right now? Stick my foot in the ground, go. Right?
What can we do to mitigate? Right.
Exactly. Like and so I don't, in order to do that, you have to train firefighters and fire officers to be able to read buildings with conviction and understand, like I was talking about, that rate of change. That's all we're trying to judge, is rate of change in a building. How fast is the event moving? And then I need to bring this thing down within our speed, right? And so that's just kind of putting a bow on the risk thing there. Going into, kind of dovetailing it in with the fire attack and the search. Really, this has been like a big realization for me of late, because so much of my like study has been involved with like specifically extinguishment fire attack. And I just kind of had this like aha epiphany moment. And I'm fortunate enough to work in an area like we go to fires and we have a good time and stuff like that. And it just kind of dawned on me like, man, how, like, especially in residential fires, we're going to put the fire out. Like, we're going to put the fire out. It's not even like now, we can sit here and slice and dice how exactly to put the fire out. And a lot of times that's where the conversation gets kind of lost as we get in the weeds on how to put the fire out.
Sure.
But when you really like pull back and you look at it from a macro level, like, what are we there for? Like, we're there for the search, man. Like, that's the iffy one. That's the variable that whether or not it turns up something, whether or not we get it off, like all that kind of stuff. I'm going to put the fire out. I'm showing up to a fire with a mindset of like, it's a foregone conclusion. I'm going to crush this thing. No problem. Right now, whether or not I crush it and do it in a way that enhances the search, that's a different question. Right. Because you can sit there 100%. And argue about, like you can argue in the conversations around the kitchen table will be like, well, I would hit it from here and I'd hit it from here and I'd do this and I'd do that. You're like, okay, pause. Ladder one's in there searching. Where does the nozzle go? Everybody right there. It needs to go right there to protect the search. Right, okay, then what are we talking about?
Right. That erases. No, I love it. And I want to bug on you there. And the search is going to be completed. The question you have is, and what is it going to be done in a timely manner? Or is it going to be done during overhaul?
Right. Right.
Is it going to be done when it matters, when they're in their pajamas laying there in the hallway floor, or is it a recovery?
Exactly.
And that's
and when you look at it from that perspective, it really answers a lot of the questions about, fire attack and where to hit it and this and that and the other. Cause you're like, it doesn't matter where we put the fire out from if we're not protecting the search. Like the search is what matters. The victims are what matters. So, let's frame up, let's build our fire attack model around enhancing the search efforts. And when you do that, like everything the nozzle team does. So like, for instance, on a Rambler or Ranch or split level or, something like that, where you're going to go in through a front door, you're going to have like a living room, kitchen, dining room, and then off to one side or the other, you're going to have bedrooms, right? And let's just say you got 2 bedrooms going at the end of the hallway. There's a lot of nuance that I can do when you start breaking down buildings. You look at buildings differently in your first due area. Now I work in a older first due area, and so we're dealing with a lot of like 1.5 and 2.5 stories, right. But it's kind of the same thing. You can still do the same thing with those buildings too. But you're like, hey, so if I go in that door and I, as a nozzleman, own, like I call it the junction. It's the area where the bedrooms, the living room, the dining room, and the front door all kind of come together.
Yes.
Right. And so that's like the best line of sight for your nozzle anywhere in that building, right? So if I just go and smack my butt right down in the middle of that junction and I just squat there and start flowing water, that ladder crew behind me or whoever's coming behind me to search, I'm corking it for them. Right. And so if I start to flow and then I'm conscious about taking a couple steps up, maybe I'm not going to start my advance, but I take a couple steps up just to let them get by. And we kind of choreograph it ahead of time. Like, hey, ladder company, like the station I work in, we've got it's a double house. We got a ladder company in our house. Like, hey, when I'm flowing left, you guys go search right. When I'm flowing right, you guys go search left. Right. Like that's a beautiful choreography right there that we can work, but it all hinges on me being conscious of I can't cork the like if it's a split level and I go up and I'm sitting right in the middle of the stairs, nobody can get around me, right? The backup man, if he's corking the doorway, nobody can get around him. What's that doing to the search? Seconds are ticking off where they can't get around because they're waiting on the fire attack to kind of move through so that they can bug in there. If I'm letting off the gas on the nozzle, this is where a lot of the hit, move, flowing and moving stuff comes in, where guys are like, well, I didn't have to push that. Yeah, you didn't have to from a fire behavior, fire attack perspective, but by you pushing it, it cleaned out everything behind you so much faster that the search crew went from like crawling around in soup they're able to duck walk and zoom through that
Yes.
building really quick. It's not about what you needed, it's about what they needed. And same thing
right
with,
back to
with
that priority, man.
hose.
Right. Yeah. So go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, dude. I'm on
Yeah, you're on a tear. I love it.
dog on a bone. But like with moving hose, guys standing in doorways, shuffling hose, you're corking it, right? Move line, like push the leading edge of the line. And then when you get up into a corner, I'm either high to the outside or I'm around the corner. Either way, I'm not standing right in that corner, corking it so that surfers can't get past me, right?
No, I love it,
And
man. It's just little tidbits of technique like that, man. That if that's all
exactly.
anybody gets out of this scrap, then the hour and 20 we've already been going's worth it. But don't cork it. I mean, that's it right there.
Don't cork it. Or like if you got fire on floor one, if you've got fire on floor one and you've pre-rehearsed with your ladder company, or you got an SOP or whatever it is, like, hey, if I got fire on floor one and I start flowing from the doors, you guys just, if I start flowing from the doorway, you guys just plan on VESing, right? Because that's going to be your fastest way up to floor two, right? If I'm going in, you can probably break off of my line and take the stairs and go through. But either way, what I'm thinking as a nozzleman is, what can I do to help them? Well, the best thing that I can do to help them is, first off, push fire on floor one, because it's going to contract everything. It's going to push and start like, it's going to essentially stop that updraft onto floor two, right? Through that internal chimney that is the stairway. So I want to base all of what I do around stopping all that crap from going upstairs, so that they can start opening everything up and get cleared out and get everything. If they take a while to find a victim, it's just going to help delay the insult on that victim. So I'm going to and I'm also thinking hydraulically ventilate like a madman. Like as soon as I get that thing knocked out, it's like,
get it
crush
out of here.
that thing, get it out of here, right?
Nice.
Open up all the windows, vent. And I'm not talking 20 seconds. I'm talking like vent till your hands go numb.
Right on. No, and again, I think it all goes back to what you said right at the beginning, that choreograph, that dance with that ladder company that you're talking about in your house, or in anybody's district, first due, who is on that search, when they know that if you're pushing it from the door that they need a VES because it's nasty, versus they see you pushing in, they know they can go. That's, again, prepare a lot to save a lot. I mean, that's just beautiful, man. I love that.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna chop it and say, I always like to ask our guests if there are books that firefighters should be reading. So you said you're a nerd and you love to read. That's your words, not mine.
Yeah, no, I got to pull out my Kindle here to make sure I get the authors down. So one of my all-time favorites, we've got The Fighter's Mind by Sam Sheridan. This is one, actually, Dave LeBlanc and I chatted about this yesterday.
Hey, I was chatting to Dave LeBlanc yesterday about this book, so it's funny. So
dude, it is one of the best. Yeah. Anyways, that's a whole nother story for a whole nother day. That book has so many parallels. Like, for maybe it hits me well because they talk a lot about wrestling and stuff like that. But it has a ton of parallels just in the fire service on how people learn. It's just phenomenally applicable.
Love it.
Stephen Pressfield, Gates of Fire, is one of my all-time favorites, about the Battle of Thermopylae, and it's essentially about Spartan Greek culture. It's phenomenal. One of the best books I've ever read.
Is it much like 300? I'm just asking.
It's finishes about that battle.
Okay.
But yeah, it's definitely a lot more like I don't know exactly how to describe it. It's just a phenomenal book, man. Like, if you like gritty, tough stories, that's a gritty, tough story.
Right up there, Gates of Fire. Okay.
Gates of Fire, also by Stephen Pressfield, The Warrior Ethos. That is another one. And then I'll give you one more here. Left of Bang.
Nice. Which is one that Dave LeBlanc had to send me last night that I added to my Amazon wish list. So
Oh, did it?
yeah,
Man, Dave and I are like kindred spirits. I just don't have his mustache.
that it's hard to knock. I mean, it's hard to even compare it to. All right, so the Fighter's Mind, Pressfields, Gates of Fire, and Warrior Ethos, and Left of Bang. Which Left of Bang was that a man? I'm pulling a blank on it. I forget the author. He did.
About like the author.
Yes, was that Gladwell?
I mean,
We talked about so many books yesterday. I can't even remember, but sorry, I wanted to get it for people who wanted to look it up.
Left of Bang is Patrick Van Horn and Jason A. Riley.
Horn and Riley. Okay, got it. Allegedly, I'm going to update the book list for the scraps, but I'm about 40 or 50 episodes behind on updating the book list. So I'll get there eventually, I promise. So Jay,
I love it.
On the scrap, we have a thing we do every episode. It's called the 5 questions for firefighters. So there is no correct answers. Everything is strictly your opinion. The points are passed out by me, and they're completely arbitrary. So what I want to know is, Jay Bonnifield, are you ready for the 5 questions for firefighters?
Let's do it.
I like it. Number 1, what is the number 1 issue facing the modern fire service?
Number 1 issue facing the fire service. Let's see. So I think I'm going to kind of tie it back in a little bit to what I was talking about earlier, where I think we're getting a little bit. I think we're losing. I think we have a tendency to lose sight of our moral obligation, like in search of measurables, and in search of, like, for instance, a lot of the focus from a lot of the UL stuff was on like temperature, right? And we like isolate because temperature is an easy measurable for us. We kind of like hyperfixate on things that are easy for us to put on a graph or a pie chart and like measure.
Sure.
But I think we hyperfixate on measurables sometimes that don't tell the whole story, and we lose sight of our moral obligation, our intangible, like the intangibles that don't fit on a graph or a pie chart of what we're there for. And maybe we can't measure them exactly yet, like, you know, obviously survivability being one, you know, there goes a lot into like what we can do, you know, looking at buildings with a what can I do mindset. And I think a lot of times we don't like to admit it, but we just have to. There's no way around it that the fire ground is full of uncertainty, and it always will be, and that's okay. And we can try ahead of time to like narrow the gaps of uncertainty, but at the end of the day, like, intuition is going to be highly valued in the fire service.
Nice.
Grit is going to be highly valued in the fire service.
Very nice.
You know, a bias for action, we need to value that highly in the fire service. Like, we need to value those intangibles and foster environments that create those intangibles within our firefighters. Because that, like, the dynamic environments that we work in, you can't always.
Got muted somehow. You can't always.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can now, but I lost you on you can't always.
Yeah, so you can't always. You can't weed out uncertainty. It's here to stay, right? And I think that's important for us to build our operations around and just kind of accept.
Oh, no, uncertainty is here to stay. I have to write down these quotes here. I'm giving you max points on that answer, and I'm going to tell you why. Because I try not to give out just max points willy-nilly. It's not a soft serve. It's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be hard-hitting. But you listed intangibles, and then you tangibilized them by saying bias for action, grit, and intuition, dude. And that is beautiful because those are intangibles that we have to value. No doubt about it, dude. That's a beautiful answer. Thank you. Moving to question number 2. What is the thing you are most excited about for the future of firefighting?
Well, this might be like recency bias, but I do think that a lot of where like Jason and the Leadership Under Fire folks are kind of driving folks who may not be like 100% familiar with their mission. I think that what the terrain they're trying to drive us towards as a fire service of focusing on human performance factors is something that I'm really excited about. I think it's really necessary in the fire service. Human performance factors being like how to make decisions in uncertain environments, and the like inherent flaws that we have as humans and how they affect us on the fire ground. You know, from like reactions under stress and our heart rates and like all that kind of stuff. You know, the lens through which, like how you grew up and how it affects your lens you view risk through, all of that, right? And I think that they are doing a phenomenal job of bringing a lot of that stuff to light. And a lot of the arguments that go round and round and round in the fire service that people beat their heads on the wall against, I think a lot of it comes down to it comes down to these underlying causes, these root causes of differences in like varying levels of human performance and how they affect people, and then how they manifest those human performance factors on the fire ground. And they'll like it manifests itself as like, oh, I don't want to go do that, like that's too risky, right? But really, when you dig into that guy, it's like, okay, well, you're the culture that you were brought up in, you know, was a culture of like, we're the most important, and, you know, never place your life. And so like, there's all these different factors that layer on that end up making the end result. And I think that they do a really good job of diving into that and getting people. It's not about like telling somebody, it's about getting them to realize it themselves.
Nice.
And it's made me think a lot about my own self and how I view conversations that are like contentious with different people, of where they're coming from, and try to look at it through like, why, not just like, oh man, it's frustrating this guy has this viewpoint. It's like, well, why does he have this viewpoint, right? And then, okay, can I approach this conversation from a different angle that caters to the background this guy has, that's going to hit with him a little bit differently, right? Because overall, at the end of the day, it's about effectiveness, not about feelings.
Right on.
So,
no,
yeah, I'm really excited about what they're doing,
dude. And I'm going to, again, max points, but I'm going to explain why you get max points, because again, it's not easy to do. Apparently it is, but you gave a link, and then I posted the link in the chat, and it's leadershipunderfire.com, correct?
Yeah, it should be, I think.
Okay. I didn't want to post the wrong one, but it definitely had a picture of a fire service guy poking his head out of a door at the homepage. So to give a resource like that and then explain why it meant so much to you, absolutely, that's better than anything else anyone could do. So 100% one of the best answers I've ever gotten there. Number 3, best rank or position to be in the fire service.
Oh, man. I've only ever been a pipeman, man, and this is what I do. This is my jam. So when I can't imagine doing anything else. Like I can't imagine another position being more fulfilling than you know, hooting and hollering and yelling like a banshee as you're opening the nozzle and pushing through a few rooms of fire and you know, coming out and high-fiving and you know, telling the war story for days to come. So I don't know, man. I outkicked my coverage on my job, man. I barely graduated high school. Like, you listen to my multiple calls thing there where he delved into a little bit of that.
Right on.
I definitely outkicked what I deserved. That's for sure. So
That's fair. That's fair. I appreciate the sentiment. It is not the correct answer. The correct answer is company officer. So
I don't know. They seem like they do a lot of paperwork.
that's true. That's very true. There is a downside. But no, excellent answer. Excellent reasoning also. Going to number 4, the best advice you have ever received.
Best advice I've ever received. So this one comes from my grandpa.
Nice.
So when I was a kid and we were going to visit my grandpa called it Sinners College. He was in prison, and going to talk on the red phone through the glass to him. And one of the times we went to go visit him and talk to him, I remember him saying, he said, "Jay, don't ever think that anything is beneath you. Don't ever think that you're too good for something. Don't ever think that it can't happen to you." And that's always stuck with me ever since that day. I think I was in first grade or something like that.
Wow, yeah, I can imagine.
For him, like, that wasn't his first time in prison. And, I got to talk to him, like, him and I were really close, and we've talked about it a number of times, but where that comes from is essentially, he's like, I didn't start out to end up here. I never intended to end up here. But a progression, and this goes for any area of your life, little sacrifices, little gives over time, and all of a sudden you're off the beaten path somewhere. And like in my marriage, like, my wife and I are high school sweethearts. We got
Nice.
3 kids together, and every thing that I do, every little give that I make where I put something ahead of my marriage, is increasing the possibility that I become a statistic, right? And that our marriage has a bad outcome. And so I got to fight like hell to make sure that I am hyper vigilant, that comes first all the time, no matter what. There's nothing in the fire service that, she'll be there long after the fire service is gone. And so, my kids, same thing. So I try to look at life through the lens of, don't think, oh, it won't happen to me. Not from a paranoid perspective, but from a humility perspective of the level that I am capable of plummeting to is no different than anybody else if I don't stay vigilant. And another thing that he would always say is, chance always has a say. So, no matter what, like, you can have your best laid plans, all that kind of stuff, but chance always is along for the ride. Chance always has a say. So just, kind of be at peace, work your ass off, and at the end of the day, whatever's going to happen is going to happen, and make sure you're doing it full speed.
I like it. Now, you said you were like 8 years old, roughly?
Yeah, I think when he said that, I was in first grade.
Okay, so yeah, that's a hell of a humility foundation when someone says, "Hey, remember, it could happen to you," and chance has a say. When that's kind of your foundation, man, that's going to keep you humble growing up, man. Love that answer. And I would give absolute max points for question 4. Question number 5, one of my favorites. I think I get your answer already in my head from talking to you for the last hour and a half. But I will say, there's heavy fire and searchable space. Would you rather be assigned to the nozzle or first in on VES?
Oh, dude, it's not even a question. I'm grabbing the pipe. That's no, nobody else is getting that thing, man. That's mine. I'll fight for that thing like crazy.
That's fair. That's fair. There it is, guys. The 5 questions for firefighters according to Jay Bonnifield. Brother, I have had a blast with you this evening. I hope you've had as much fun as I have.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me. It's been awesome.
I tried to keep up with you, man. Dude, you are a articulate, well-versed, your vocabulary is impressive. It's just the full package.
I'm gonna tell my wife you said that, man. She's gonna get a kick out of that. She's gonna love it. Thank you.
Best place to contact you, book a class, reach out, get information.
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook, but that's it. I'm not super out there on really anything. So yeah, but I'm on Facebook and Teach for Brothers in Battle and definitely love working with those guys, man. It's such a good group of guys and gals, and yeah, so that's pretty much the two ways that you can get at me. So I'm kind of a hermit out here in the woods.
Fair enough. I'm doing my house cleaning now. I want to talk about Honor the Fallen Fire Conference that is coming up. It's coming up June 4, 5, and 6 right here in Moore, Oklahoma. Registration is coming next Thursday. So a week from today, you will be able to register for the Honor the Fallen Fire Conference. 100% of everything that comes from the conference is going to the families of the fallen Waynoka firefighters that perished doing that search in January of 2021. So if you want to be involved in that, we've got so much raffle stuff already being donated and thrown at us. Swag from Smoothbore Cartel, CF Tactics. CF Tactics, Kurt threw in 4 conference passes, including H-Rock, Water on the Fire, 2 to Fire School. So much stuff. Brian LaFleur, a custom leather bucket. I'm trying to get everything in there. And we haven't even started even really pushing for donations. So if you know something that will be added to the raffle to make it awesome, if you know a company that might be interested in sponsoring the conference, please reach out to me. The shirts are on firehousevigilance.com, so go out there and grab them. Again, everything is going to the families. The speaker lineup is unreal. You can go see it at the Honor the Fallen Fire Conference on Facebook. And every one of those speakers is coming in and giving up their time and making it just a badass conference. So that's my big thing I wanted to push and hype this week. Other than that, thank you, Mr. Jay Bonnifield, for being an unbelievably good guest.
And thanks for having me. It was, like I said, it was a blast, and you're doing awesome stuff, man. Keep doing good work.
Thank you, brother. For all of the audience, thank you guys for the comments, the questions, even the ones that requested Jay to take off his pants. Those are even appreciated. And I hope the tone stays silent unless it's burning. Stay safe out there.